So I'm back with another book recital. This one is one of my favourites, The Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa, Pinkola Estés. And this book is, if any of you have read it, and I'm sure most women on the path have definitely found this book, or this book has found them along the way. This was a book that I purchased a lot sooner than I actually read, and I remember the day that it literally jumped off my shelf onto the ground, and I said, okay, I see you, you want to be read. And I think that's kind of the consciousness running through it. It's a bit of an activation in terms of the stories. It's kind of old folklore and old indigenous codes and old traditions that certainly as a woman in the West I haven't been exposed to. And it's not a book that I read all at once, and maybe other women can testify for this. It's a book that you digest over time. I remember it took me probably 6 months, something like that. It was on my bedside table, coming back to it time and time again, coming back to it, reading a story and coming back to it. So I think it is a book that both women and men can enjoy. I'm assured that probably men are already reading this, although it does feel like it is very kind of centered around the feminine and the feminine rise and things like that. So I've picked a passage to read. It will probably be part of a series of recordings because I'm not going to read the whole chapter. Maybe I will record a few more from the same book in the future, but we'll start with this one here. So this chapter is called The Mate, Union with the Other. I hope you enjoy. Don't mind my cat, she's obviously coming in the door behind me if you think it's a ghost at that time. Hymn for the wild man, Manawi. If women want men to know them, really know them, they have to teach some of the deep knowing. Some women say they are tired and that they already have done too much in this area, and I humbly suggest they have been trying to teach a man who does not care to learn. Most men want to know, want to learn. When men show that willingness, then it is time to reveal things, not just because, but because another soul has asked. You will see. So here are some of the things which will make it much easier for a man to understand, for him to meet a woman halfway. Here is a language, our language. In mythos, as in life, there is no doubt that the wild man seeks his own down under the earth bride. In tales among the Celts, there are famous pairs of wild gods who love one another so. They often live under a lake, where they are the protectors of the underlife and the underworld. From Babylonian mythos, the cedar-thighed Inanna calls to her lover the bull-plough, "Come cover me with your wildness." In modern times, even now in the upper Midwest, the mother and father of God are still said to roll about in their spring bed, making thunder. Similarly, there is no one wildish woman loves better than a mate who can be her equal. Yet over and over, perhaps since the beginning of infinity, those who would be her mate are not quite sure they comprehend her true nature. What does a woman truly desire? This is an ancient question, a soulful riddle about the wildish and mysterious nature which all women possess. While the hag in Chaucer's The Wife of Bath croaked out that the answer to this question was that women wished to have sovereignty over their own lives, and this is indeed an irrevocable fact, there is yet another and equally powerful truth that answers this question as well. Here is a story that replies to the age-old question about women's true nature. Those who endeavour in the ways and means shown in the story shall be lover and mate to the wildish woman forever. Long ago, Miss V.B. Washington gifted me with a little of African American story that I have amplified into a literary story here I call Manawi. Manawi. There was a man who came to court two sisters who were twins, but their father said you may not have them in marriage until or unless you can guess their names. Manawi guessed and guessed, but he could not guess the name of the sisters. The young women's father shook his head and sent Manawi away time after time. One day Manawi took his little dog with him on a guessing visit, and the dog saw that one sister was prettier than the other, and the other sister was sweeter than the other. Though neither sister possessed all virtues, the little dog liked them very much, for they gave him treats and smiled into his eyes. Manawi failed to guess the names of the young women again that day and trudged home, but the little dog ran back to the hut of the young women. There he poked his ear under one of the side walls and heard the women giggling about how handsome and manly Manawi was. The sisters, as they spoke, called each other by name, and the little dog heard and ran as fast as he could back to his master to tell him. But on the way, a lion had left a big bone with meat on it near the path, and the tiny dog smelled it immediately, and without another thought, he veered off into the brush, dragging the bone. There, he happily licked and snapped at the bone till all the flavour was gone. Oh, the tiny dog suddenly remembered the forgotten task, but unfortunately he had also forgotten the names of the young women as well. So back he ran to the twin sisters' hut a second time, and this time it was night, and the young women were oiling each other's arms and legs and readying themselves as though for a celebration. Again the little dog heard them call each other by name. He hopped up in the air in a fit of delight and was racing back down the path to the hut of Manawee, when from the bush came the smell of fresh nutmeg. Now, there was nothing the little dog loved more than nutmeg, so he took a quick turn off the path and sped to where a lovely kumquat pie sat cooling on a log. Well, soon the pie was all gone, and the little dog had lovely nutmeg breath. As he trotted home with a very full belly, he tried to think of the young women's names, but again he had forgotten them. So finally the little dog raced back to the sisters' hut again, and this time the sisters were readying themselves to be wed. Oh no, thought the little dog, there is hardly time left. And when the sisters called each other by name, the little dog put the names into his mind and sped away, absolutely and resolutely determined that nothing would stop him from delivering the precious 2 names to Manawee right away. The little dog spied some small fresh kill on the trail, but ignored it and vaulted over it. The little dog for a moment thought he smelled a curl of nutmeg in the air, but he ignored it and instead ran and ran towards home and his master. But the little dog did not plan for a dark stranger to leap out of the bush and grab him by the neck and shake him so hard his tail almost fell off. For that is what happened, and all the while the stranger shouted, "Tell me those names. What are the names of those young women, so I may win them?" The little dog thought he himself would faint from the tight fist about his neck, but he fought bravely. He growled, he scratched, he kicked, and finally bit the giant stranger between the fingers. And little dog's teeth stung like wasps. The stranger bellowed like a water buffalo, but the little dog would not let go. The stranger ran off into the bush with the little dog dangling from his hand. "Let go, let go, let go of me, little dog, and I will let go of you," pleaded the stranger. And the little dog snarled between his teeth, "Do not come back, or you won't see morning ever again." And so the stranger escaped into the bush, moaning and holding his hand as he ran. And the little dog proceeded a half hobble and a half run down the path to Manawee. Even though his pelt was bloody and his jaws ached, the names of the young women were clear in his mind, and he limped up to Manawee beaming. Manawee gently washed the little dog's wounds, and the little dog told him the whole story and the 2 names of the young women as well. Manawee raced back to the village of the young women with the little dog on his shoulders riding high, the dog's ears flying like 2 horsetails. When Manawee reached the father with the names of his daughters, the twin sisters received Manawee completely dressed to journey with him. They had been waiting for him all along. This is how Manawee won 2 of the most beautiful maidens in the Riverland, and all 4, the sisters, Manawee and the little dog, lived in peace together for a long time to come. Crick, crack, crout, now this story's out. Crick, crack, crumb, now this story's done. The dual nature of women. With folk stories, as with dreams, we can understand their content subjectively, all the symbols portraying aspects of a single person's psyche, but we can also understand tales objectively as they relate to conditions and relations in the outer world. Here let us talk about the Manawee tale, more in terms of relationship between a woman and her mate, keeping in mind that many times, as it is without, it is also within. This story unravels an old secret about women, and it is this. To win the wildish woman's heart, a mate would understand her natural duality through and through. Although we could understand the 2 women in the tale ethnologically as brides-to-be in a polygamous culture, from an archetypal perspective, this story speaks about the mystery of 2 powerful feminine forces within a single woman. The Manawee story contains all the essential facts for being close to the wildish woman. Manawee, through his faithful dog, guesses the 2 names and 2 natures of the feminine. He cannot win unless he solves the mystery, and he must use his instinctual self, as symbolised by the dog, to accomplish it. Anyone close to a woman is in fact in the presence of 2 women, an outer being and an interior creatura. One who lives in the topside world, one who lives in the world not so easily seeable. The other being lives by the light of day and is easily observed. She is often pragmatic, acculturated, and very human. The creatura, however, often travels to the surface from far away, often appearing and then as quickly disappearing, yet always leaving behind a feeling, something surprising, original, and knowing. Understanding this dual nature in women sometimes causes men, and even women themselves, to close their eyes and hail heaven for help. The paradox of women's twin nature is not when one side is more cool in feeling tone, the other side is more hot. When one side is more lingering and rich relationally, the other may be somewhat glacial. Often one side is more happy and elastic while the other has a longing for I know not what. One may be sunny while the other is bittersweet and wistful. These two women who are one are separate by conjoined elements which combine in the psyche in thousands of ways. While each side of a woman's nature represents a separate entity with a different functions and discriminate knowledge, they must, like the brain with its corpus callosum, have a knowing or translation of one another and therefore function as a whole. If a woman hides one side or favours one side too much, she lives a very lopsided life which does not give her access to her entire power. This is not good. It is necessary to develop both sides. There is much to be learned about the strength of two when we examine the symbol of twins. Throughout the world since ancient times, twins have been thought to be endowed with supernatural powers. In some cultures, there is an entire discipline devoted to the balancing of the nature of twins, for they are thought to be two entities which share one soul. Even after their deaths, twins are fed, spoken to, given gifts and sacrifices. In various African and Carib communities, the symbol of twin sisters is said to possess juju, the mystical energy of the soul. Therefore, it is required that twins are impeccably taken care of lest a bad fate befall the entire community. One precaution from the hoodoo religion of Haiti requires that twins always be fed exactly the same measured portions in order to summarily ally all jealousy between them, but more so to prevent the wasting away of one of them, for if one dies, so shall the other, and the special soulfulness they bring to the community will be lost. Likewise, a woman has tremendous powers when the dual aspects of psyche are consciously recognised and beheld as a unit, held together rather than held apart. The power of two is very strong, and neither side of the duality should be neglected. They need to be fed equally, for together they bring an uncanny power to the individual. I once heard a story from an old African-American man in the Mid-South. He came out of an alley as I was sitting amidst the graffiti of an inner-city park. Some people will call him crazy, for he spoke to anyone and no one. He shuffled along with one finger held out as though to test the wind's direction. Cuentistas recognize such persons as having been touched by the gods. In our tradition, we call such a man el bulto, the bundle, for souls such as he carry a certain kind of wear and show it to any who will look, anyone who has the eyes to see it and sense to shelter it. This particular kindly el bulto gave me this story. It is about a certain kind of ancestral transmission. He called the story one stick, two stick. This is the way of the old African kings. He whispered. In the story, an old man is dying and calls his people to his side. He gives a short, sturdy stick to each of his many offspring, wives and relatives. Break the stick, he instructs them. With some effort, they all snap the sticks in half. This is how it is when a soul is alone and without anyone. They can be easily broken. The old man next gives each of his kin another stick and says, "This is how I would like you to live after I pass. Put your sticks together in bundles of twos and threes. Now break these bundles in half." No one can break the sticks when there are two or more in a bundle, the old man smiles. We are strong when we stand with another soul. When we are with others, we cannot be broken. Likewise, when both sides of the dual nature are held close together in consciousness, they have tremendous power and cannot be broken. This is the nature of the psychic duality, of twinning, the two aspects of women's personality. By itself, the more civilized self is fine, but somehow lonely. By itself, the wildish self is also fine, but wistful for relationship with the other. The loss of women's psychological, emotional, and spiritual powers comes from separating these two natures from one another and pretending one or the other no longer exists. This tale can be viewed as being about masculine duality as well as female duality. The Manawi man has his own dual nature, a human nature, and an instinctive nature as symbolized by the dog. His human nature, while sweet and loving, is not enough to win the courtship. It is his dog, a symbol of his instinctual nature, that has the ability to creep near the women and with his keen listening hear their names. It is the dog that learns to overcome superficial seductions and retain the most important knowings. It is Manawi's dog that has sharp hearing and tenacity, that has the instincts to burrow under walls and to find, to chase, and to retrieve valuable ideas. As in other fairy tales, masculine forces can carry bluebird-like or murderous Mr. Fox sorts of energy and thereby attempt to demolish the dual nature of women. That sort of suitor cannot tolerate duality and is looking for perfection, for the one truth, the one immovable, unchangeable feminine substance, embodied in the one perfect woman. Aye! If you meet this kind of person, run the other way as fast as you can. It is better to have a Manawi type lover both within and without. He is a much better suitor, for he is intensely devoted to the idea of the two, and the power of the two is in acting as one integral entity. So Manawi wishes to touch his most ubiquitous but mysterious combination of soul life in woman. And he has a sovereignty all of his own, since he is himself a wildish natural man. He resonates too and has a taste for the wildish woman. Among the cumulative tribe of masculine figures in a woman's psyche, whom Jungians call animus, there is also a Manawi-like attitude which finds and claims a woman's duality, finding it valuable, courtable, and desirable, instead of devilish, ugly, and to be disdained. Manawi, whether as an internal or external figure, represents a fresh but faith-filled lover whose central desire is to name and understand the mysterious and numinous double in women's nature. That concludes the passage for today. I will be recording the rest of the passages in another video soon. Much love to you. Thank you for listening.